Hello, now, is there anyone out there? Can you hear me? We are testing our new live streaming on Facebook, on the Kardec Radio Facebook site. I'm hoping that someone can hear me so we can start this program. I should test to see if the site is actually responding. Okay. We will. People can hear me now. That's what I wanted to make sure. Yes, I had to reboot the computer completely. Something must have happened on an update. So I apologize for that. That could be an auspicious start, right? Get our errors down at the beginning of the year, January 7th. We're here to talk about the lower zone as presented by various spirits to the Reverend Vale Owen. This is our first live stream, actually our second, because our first didn't work, on Kardec Radio Facebook site. So again, anyone who's listening to this, you can join us on Kardec Radio on your Android or Apple device, on your App Store or Play Store. You can look up Kardec, K-A-R-D-E-C Radio, and load that app. You can listen 24 hours a day. I know my wife and I, we do all the time and listen to people. But now we also have the Kardec Radio Facebook site, which is very exciting. I can't see how you can get better than that. So we want to reach many people. It's extremely wonderful that Vanessa and all the people, Spiritist people, are working very hard on this. So it's just wonderful. So I can't say enough things about all the wonderful work that's been done to get this going. So let's carry in there and let's talk about the lower zone. Now, the Reverend Vale Owen. Oh, we're also streaming on Kardec Radio too. I just started that one, so hopefully, I'm sorry for people that are interrupted this program. So the Reverend Vale Owen was a Spiritist in name. He never called himself a Spiritist, but everything in the books I read in the Beyond the Veil and pointed that he was a Spiritist. And in fact, I got his name from the book Voltaire, which is still not in English. I keep looking for it. And in the very last page of the book Voltaire, it had a kind of a gathering of people who've been helping Spiritism throughout the earth. And they had a list of people. They're all, Spanish, Portuguese names. And really almost the last person on the list was this person called Reverend Vale Owen. So I looked him up on Wikipedia, and I said, well, this is a real person. Anytime I read like Chico Xavier's books, I try to look and see if there's a historical figure that I can actually identify and see what's going on. It's amazing how much you learn by, looking at these key words. And Reverend Vale Owen was at the party, and he actually wrote some books, and I bought all of his books. And what I've done is I have put in my books, Heaven and Below, that I have a series of 3 books, and I took all of his messages and I categorized them in different things, because it was the messages that came from Reverend Vale Owen is additive and complementary to everything we're learning from different other artists, authors, like, Chico Xavier, Leon Denis, Yvonne Piera, Divaldo Franco, all the spirits that come and talk to them. And this is very interesting. So I wanted to go through and you see a little bit different view of things from the Reverend Vale. And that's why I figured tonight I would talk about his view of the lower zone. And of course, now just to quickly, because I'm sure most people know this, is lower zones is that their lower regions is composed of, it's called umbral in Portuguese, and as Chico Xavier said, the lower zone starts at the tip of your nose. It's It's right there. It actually, so what we usually, the definition is we start at the crust of the earth. Below the crust of the earth is what the people call the dark abyss, right? It's a not hell forever. It's a type of purgatory where once you change your attitude, then you rise out. There. Oh, even Vanessa's on that. See. So if we look at the lower zone, in a speech by Geraldo Dutra, and so I'll give you some metrics about the lower zone. The speech by Geraldo Dutra Diaz, a great. I wish he would we get more translations of his speeches in English because he's just wonderful. And he stated there's about 21 billion souls, which means incarnates and discarnates, right? And so if you take our current population of approximately 7.5 billion incarnates on Earth, it leaves a little less than around, let's say, 14 billion souls who inhabit the spherical bands around the Earth. That could be below in the dark abyss, the lower zone, or in heaven. And so what Chico said in the past is that about 30% of the people will ascend to one of the levels of heaven, which is about a little bit over 4 billion. So therefore, rough calculations, the population of the lower zone, the umbral and below, is probably around 10 billion souls. So they actually make up the majority of spirits. So that's just kind of gives you some perspective on the lower zone and below. So there's a lot of souls. So the math may be torturous to some, but life in the lower zone is also not pleasant. So and so the information given to the Reverend G. Vale Owen is very interesting. And one of the things that he first talks about is suffering. And of course, I want to also make sure everybody knows that Allan Kardec's, this is really the whole fountainhead of Spiritism. Allan Kardec's The Spirit books, one of the reasons most people are in that lower level of heaven is selfishness. And suffering helps us get out of our selfishness. And there's a lot of good information in there. So, and actually always start with the Spirits book if you're interested in this. So, in the Reverend G. Vale Owens, he had one of the spirits that talked to him. It was called Zabdial, and he was a spirit. He lived on the 10th level of heaven. Now, just real quickly for people on this is the spirits who talked to Z. Vale Owen said, look, we're going to use a numbering system of heaven, and we're going to use it. Every spirit that talks to you, you're going to use the same numbering system, but other people can use other numbering systems. So don't think that what I'm telling you is, the absolute, that's the way it has to be done. But they were just saying to keep us all logical, we're going to use this number system. So level 1 of heaven, I don't know, it could be a little bit below, it could be at the no solar level, and then you go up and up. Which is another interesting point, is that in the books by G. Vale Owen, they talk a lot about the higher levels. Now, you don't really see the higher levels, read about the higher levels of heaven in other books that you've seen in Spiritism, but the G. Vale Owen talks a lot about that. But right now we're going to talk about the lower zone. So this is what he said about the lower zone. He said, light and darkness are states of the spirits, And when these dwelling in the darkness cry for light, that means that they become out of touch with their environment. So we send them what help is needed. And that is usually direction by which they find their way, not into regions of light where they would be in torture and utterly blinded, but into a region less dark, tinctured by not so much by light as they may bear until they outgrow that state and cry in their longing for more. So doesn't that mean, this is why it's so great about the books by G. Vale Owen. That's like a place like they would take someone like the Mansion Paz, right? The Peace House. And what's Andre Luis writes all about, right? They don't take him all the way up to level of heaven and, because they couldn't see, right? They have to be conditioned. So, and according to Spiritism, of course, those who are in there are there because they haven't let, the reason this darkness is there is because they're not used to the light of God and the reflection of the environment, of the love that permeates throughout heaven. And so then this is what Zabdal says about the process of moving from a lower region to a higher one. So this again, this is what he says, and of course we hear different things in other spiritist writing, but I figure it's very interesting to see what Vale Owen says. He says, when a spirit leaves a dark region for one less dark, he experiences an immediate sense of relief and comfort by comparison with his former state. For now his environment is on harmony with his own inner state of development. But as he continues to develop an aspiration after good, he gradually becomes out of harmony with his surroundings, and then in ratio to his progress, so his discomfort increases until it becomes not less than agony. Then in his helplessness and approaching near despair have come to pass when his own endeavors can go no further. He cries for help to those who are able to give it in God's name and enable him one stage onward near the region where dimness rather than darkness reigns. So again, they don't use, but this is partially describing the law of affinity, right? We go where we are with other people, other souls. And he says, so at last he comes to the place where light is seen to be light, and his onward way is henceforth not through pain and anguish, but from joy to greater joy, and hence to glory and glory greater still. So as we all know, it's not an easy thing, and I'm sure we've all gone through it, to rise out of the lower zone. It's a very painful experience because you are cleansing yourself of all that dross, right? All that accumulated, not pertinent, not good behavior, right? Not good thinking, right? Your attitude and your characteristics dictate where you're going to go according to the law of affinity. So Zabdal explained the process, but he also desires us to understand that life with others who are also dark and cruel is not meant as a punishment, but as an object lesson, a direct method to allow the soul in question to form his or her own opinion as to the correct course of action. So Zabdal then tells us more. He goes, but do not mistake my words of their meaning. There is no vengeance of an angry God, my warden friend. God is our Father, and he is love. So he goes on to say, again, what we've heard from other areas. And therefore, what he's saying is we are told that like children being disciplined, right, we rebel against authority. But as we grow older, we understand what our parents were trying to teach us, right? Older still, we comprehend the reason and the method used. And the lessons given to us are given in love, affording us a path to improve is a sign of love that God has for us, are trying our best to make sure that we return the love of God. So I just want to give that quick idea to show you the parallel and the complementary description of the lower zone. And this again is from the Reverend Vale Owen. He was an Anglican Reverend. He was kicked out because he published what he wrote. But this is like in the 1910s. So this is about, he had these 1910s, 1920s. He had these and he published these just about the time, Chico Xavier was born, I think born in 1910. And so it just shows you how the spirit world has been trying to influence different geographical areas. And, they change their communication a little bit as they go from place to place. So it's very interesting. So now I want to go to what I think is a very another interesting segment from Beyond the Veil. Actually, this is in a separate book, and this is about Paul's descent into the lower zone and redemption. I don't know how many people have read the books by Andre Luis, but I would think that if you had read the book Liberation, that was, it just was an amazing book. It talked about the lower zones and getting down into the depths. Well, this is another view of that. This is really getting down into the dark abyss. So when he started talking about this is the separate book he had, which is called, the title of the book, it's a very small book. It's only 68 pages. It's called Paul and Albert. And it's 68 pages of some of the most powerful statements and visions I have ever read. And not because of the monsters or cruelty mentioned, but of the normal course of thinking and, and behavior of the citizens of the lower zone, and attitudes that would just fit fine within our current culture. And although some may decry their lack of empathy and morals, but still, many of these poor souls were very successful in the physical world. So let's go through what Reverend G. Vale Owen got from, what he wrote down from the spirits. And he talked about this, a spirit who he called Paul. Now, Paul was a doctor in England, in London. He was very successful. And they talk about his last memories. And this is what was said. And this is through a group of spirits led by a spirit called Kathleen. He said that that group said, just like Chico, right? They even talked about, I'm getting off a second, how Chico, when he wrote No Solar and his other books, he didn't just have one spirit, talking to his ear, like the pictures, like you see Emmanuel, dictating to him. It's usually a group of spirits. And again, of course, G. Vale Owen said, yes, there's, and they told him, yeah, there's a group of us. And then we use one, and this group used the spirit Kathleen to channel their messages to best fit someone who was in tune with Reverend G. Vale Owen's way of thinking. So this is what they're talking about. Paul, he had been figuring out what he had made that day. And as he had motored home in his comfortable car with his chauffeur in front, he had been idly gazing at the chauffeur's back, and the quaint thought had come into his mind that if the man had, say, about 30 shillings in his pocket, and his watch had cost £3, and his underclothes, say, £2, and uniform had cost £5, 10 shillings complete, well, he had made just about 1 3/8 of what would buy that man as he sat there. And it had not been an extra good day so far as remuneration went. So, of course, who can say we've not had similar thoughts? Because this is very interesting, and because I know I have. When I used to be a consultant in the IT field, I would think of I'm making this much money, and I added up my gains, and go, that felt good, and I had this warm inner glow that I was probably making more money than other people, and it's just you read these things, you go, oh my heavens, that's me, right? That's me. It's exactly what I was thinking. And so Paul, was a doctor. He was a physician in London. He had a profitable practice. He had a house in London, a maid, a butler. So I bet you this was probably, and he had a car. So it's probably the end of the 1800s when cars were around. And, he had a wife and child well taken care of by the gifts of his material wealth. So, and I ask you, when they say what Paul's last memories are, what's changed in 100 years? I know I went through the same memory, so it's, and I don't want to single out unfairly a class of people that make money or whatever. I mean, we're all kind of like that no matter what we do. But, we all place ourselves, not all of us, but we all kind of measure ourselves on that metric of money and how much we make. So interesting. So then he dies. And he wakes up in this dingy room, and he couldn't understand why he was clothed in an old calico suit. And his coat was too large for him, and his pants were in tatters. And what worried him most was that he'd actually shrunken in size. He was no longer slightly fat, but more skin and bones. And he felt groggy, and he noticed 3 women and 1 man in the room, all sitting on the floor saying nothing. And he looked at them, and he looked at, they kind of looked hideous and evil to him, and he could just feel that there's wickedness in the air. And this is all in the book, Paul and Albert. And the strange thing about it is that the wickedness and the evil seemed not so much as theirs as his own reflected back to him. So then, sitting there so weak and confused, and he finally said something. And, goes, where am I? He thought he was kidnapped or whatever. And so then the 3 women looked at each other, and the 1 man in the room, he says, well, the man says, well, there's no hurry, my friend. There's plenty of time for everything here. And he laughed, right, in a mirthless way, because we have come together here, but this is not our home. This is your home. Ours is not far away, but we are informed of your arrival, and we are sent to greet you. And as I said before, there is plenty of time for everything. And the guy said, and the man looked at Paul in the eyes, says, do you recognize me? And then Paul saw the man. And the man had a badly set, broken nose. And what was revealed in the book is Paul wanted to sleep with the man's wife, and the man had gotten in an accident. And Paul, on purposely, badly set the man's broken nose so he would look ugly. And here's this man decided to help Paul in the very lower zone. And he knew he was in the shape of the nose. And then he recognized another woman. One of them was a woman called Madame Blascombe, and she ran a gambling den in which the doctor was a frequent guest and often took part in their schemes, right? So again, she had died, and he was part of that. Another woman was a younger woman that he had led into prostitution and actually she became a prostitute after he was done with her, right? Of course, back in London in those days, very cruel, right? A lot of women had to be on the streets. And then Paul looked at the third woman. She didn't fit in. She was young and pretty. And she appeared brighter than the others. And she walked up to Paul, and this is what she said. She goes, this man, the one he broke the nose on, has called you doctor. That office is no longer yours, for you've not used it well. As to your medical skill, I will only say that it was not nearly so great as either you or your unfortunate patients considered it to be. For it was based on material science, and even the bodies of your patients are more than mere matter. You took no account of the fact that those bodies were permeated through and through with spirit, which being withdrawn, animation ceased. What made the affair so much worse, I still speak in a medical sense, was that your motive in chief was the making of money. The curing of your patient was not the aim, but only an aim. It was not the principal aim you had in view. It took a subordinate place. You would not have admitted this even to yourself. So you do not accept my words now. This will come back to you in the midst of your agony, and it will be help to you then. That is why I have spoken to you in this way. Well, of course, she was Paul's, guardian spirit, a mentor. She spoke to him quite plainly, without ceremony. Said, this is why you're in here, and this is what's going to happen to you. So then she tells Paul, okay, the man with a disfigured face is going to be your guide. Paul's going to get you used to this area. And so then the book goes on, and he follows Albert a bit, and he goes, no, I'm getting out of here. So they tried to climb up a mountain, right? They get up to a higher level. And of course it got too bright. They couldn't make it, right? It was just impossible, right? As you know, from one level to another. And then Paul says, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm going to go find my own way. And Albert says, okay, you're right. Go find your own way. And then the guardian spirit says, look, Paul, you're going to have to accept what I've told you. And you're going to be under the power of these people in the lower zones. They're going to be actually much crueler than you have ever been. You need to accept this. You need to realize this fact, right? So I advise you to cultivate the ability in yourself of accepting what help I and Albert are to give to you. Of course, then he rejected that. Now, what's interesting is then Kathleen, who was the spirit communicating with the Reverend G. Vale, she kind of cut into this and said, look, this is for your readers. Listen, this is one of the most important lessons for people to learn while in the earth life. The qualification is emphatic. It is much more difficult to undo here any wrong committed or wrong course taken while on earth than it is to do so in the earth life. Again, it all points to what we've been told by other ones. Earth life is there, right? We're not on earth to become geniuses. No, most of us aren't, right? Or to really expand our intellectual capability. We're here to purify and correct our character and our attitude, our personality. So she just, reiterated that. So Paul goes his own way. And then this other woman, started following him, and this is the woman that he had led into a bad crowd. But then he ditches her, and he just walks, and then he walks. So now this is where you're getting this look of the dark abyss that you don't get in maybe some of the other things. So he started walking. He sees this group of people. He sees this group of people on a dais, and they're talking. And he kind of walks behind the crowd, and then the two up on the stage says, "Hey, you come up here." And Paul goes, "No, I don't want to." And they, through their powerful will, said, "No, you're coming up here." He had no choice but to obey. And he said, "Okay, you're going to play the part of a model, and we're going to give an anatomical lecture, all the different parts of the body," because that has been his interest in his earth life, right? And so what they did is they did this sarcastic show of pointing out, they stripped him naked, they tied him to a rock, and they pointed out the different parts of his body. And then when they wanted to show like the liver and heart, they actually sliced them open, took the liver out and showed, "Hey, here's the liver." And then as they were doing that, they were talking about all the embarrassing and horrible episodes of his life, because of course they could read his mind. So the cruelty was just amazing of what was displayed in that lower level. When they were done with him, they threw him in a cave. And then, of course, as what we've heard from other ones is, no matter what they do to your body in the spirit world, you're immortal. You can't die. It will, as your thoughts become more clear, you will his body remolded itself. And he was okay. But as he sat in that cave recuperating, the woman came back to him and said, "Okay, can I help you?" And he said, "Okay." So then he started following her. And the woman's name was Monica. And that's the one he used so roughly in his youth. So he followed Monica for a way, and he couldn't decipher where he was going, to what purpose. And then he got angry. And he says, "Okay, now look." He goes, you got to get me out of this. I don't mind this way of life so much, but, if I can only, ensure myself against your cruelty. Now, you seem to know this country fairly well. You've been here longer than I've. Show me where I may live without being bullied and tortured, and I'll try and settle down until something better turns up. And she says, "Well, no, Albert still awaits you." Then he got really mad, and he took a broken branch, and he started going like this to hit her. Then what happens? Now, this is the interesting part. Then what happens is he couldn't move. Some hand took him and said, "No." And now this is what we really haven't seen, like in the other books that I've read in Spiritism, is the actual physicalness of sometimes restraining another spirit. Usually it's all done by talking and by helping them, like in liberation, it's very involved. But the guardian angel took his hand and said, just held it steady. And he could not move. Of course, right? When he sees this guardian angel as this, bright, little woman, but who is just immensely more powerful than he is. And, he was just sitting there and he trembled with fear. And she and this is what it says. She looked at him and and she said this. He goes, "This poor lamb," meaning Monica, "has fought the fight of a lion. You helped her headlong into this region of gloom and sorrow, but she has overcome the death, which is the portion of those who dwell here, and has begun the ascent towards the borderland, beyond which lies the land of lesser gloom, and beyond that, the region of twilight brightening into the dawn. She has a long way to go, and the road is still toilsome, but she has won in that battle and able for the journey. She has given her choice to proceed or to linger here. She stayed here, knowing that you were coming over, and although she had no love for you above the others, she asked to be permitted to wait, if by any chance she might be of help to you, to save you from the worst. He goes, "Monica has done what she could. She must now leave you, lest ill befall her from contagion of your company, for she is not immune from temptation yet. Brave as her fight has been, and great her victory, is not final nor complete. So you shall now find your own way of your own leading, and those who may be purified only by fire. When you are so purified, I will show myself to you again." So this is a difference that I've seen in the books by Vale Owen, is the higher spirits will sometimes actually physically control lesser spirits. And in fact, in another thing, there was a high spirit who went to this city in the lower zone and at a gate into one of these cities, and they said, "No, you can't come in here." He goes, "Oh, well, yes, I will." And he just touched the man's sword, and the sword just dissolved. So I have not read anything on that like that in other spiritualist literature. They may be out there, but I haven't read. Maybe they're in Portuguese, but I haven't read it. So to make a long story short, Paul traveled and went for many, many months down, and went further down, right? As the more you practice evil, the more, he tried to fit in with the evilness, I'm sure. And he just, it started affecting him, right? And then he started his way back up. And so at the last, right, after his very will was laying in tatters, to begin to see the effect of evil upon himself and other. So, of course, this is precisely how God and Jesus Christ, right, as the leader of humanity, combats evil. It's not like, the movies where, we have a high spirit there with a machine gun killing all the evil people. No, what happens is that they use evil to combat evil. And they use evil to cure evils, probably what I should say. The supreme intelligence who created all spirits with free will so they can choose their path are provided a chance to live in a world where others think just like them. So if you are a murderer or a pickpocket or a con man or whatever, and you go down the lower zone, guess what? Welcome. There are people just like you. There are people who are as cruel and mean as you are. How do you like it? This is how this works. It's brilliant, right? I mean, simply brilliant. And it's all edifying, right? It's not punishment because you didn't have to go there. And they're not punishing you. What they are doing is saying, look at the effect of your own attitude. So Paul is down there, and he finally starts making his way up. And he comes to, he comes to this crude church, and it's kind of almost on the level of where he was when he first started. And he listens to a high spirit that comes to the church. They come periodically, right? They're trying to tell people there are better things. And the man in the church says, "Look, you're all here. I just want to talk to you about what is waiting for you when you change your attitude." Because here are the people in the audience: a financier who dealt with millions of sterling, a colonel of cavalry with a country seat ancient and beautiful, a doctor of divinity, 3 doctors of medicine, of course one was Paul, a lady who had a fine mansion a few miles out of town, and a townhouse that was a center of politics and art. She is one of the leaders in a philanthropic effort to raise a fund for the building of a sanatorium for indigenous society people, and a millionaire who left many large bequests to charity, a number of lesser lights in the life, but all intelligent, educated people. In addition to these, rulers and princes are there, legislators, some still remembered and honored by the people of earth. So this is the people he talked to. But he talked to them in simple terms, as suited more to a Sunday school than to a regular congregation. And he kept in mind as he spoke about the experiences that what they had passed through. And so what Kathleen, who was the narrator of the story, I'm talking to Vale Owen, she tells us that these people concentrated on what brought them status and accolades from others, not on how they could improve their spiritual quotient. So hence, when they passed over, their accumulated experience counted for almost nothing. It's just like as Swedenborg says, is what's your motivation for doing good? Is it to make yourself look good? It has, there's no reward for that. If I'm doing good to make myself look good, that, what does that mean? It means actually nothing for your spiritual quotient. So it shows you how, how many people are in positions of power who think that way. So therefore, at the end of the service, Paul found that Albert was there too. And he was waiting for him after a very long period to return. And then now Paul felt a new appreciation for Albert. And they said, okay, let's try, I understand what you've told me. Let's try to get our way back up. So again, where they took the path from the very beginning of the story, they started try to go back up to that borderland so they could make it. And they walk and they go. And then there was a gate, and before the gate, here you'll learn about, you'll read about bridges and things like that when you read about other spiritualist literature, but here was a gate. And they sat down to rest for a while. And then this is what the book says. And as they lifted their eyes, the guardian spirit, she came back and she says, "Oh, I've been hoping to find you, my two poor sufferers. But that is over now, and peace has followed hard upon the heels of reconciliation. You notice the results, do you not?" And they looked at her in surprise, and then she laughed, and she stepped forward and taking them each by the arm and raised them to their feet. And she turned them so they could look at each other. She goes, "There, now what do you think?" And they both looked at her, and they continued to gaze, surprised at her coming, and they didn't understand her purpose. And then Paul said, "Well, sister, I'm thinking that for such a young woman, your grip is only equaled by the quality of your muscles." And she just laughed at that. He goes, "No." He goes, that's not what I meant. He goes, "What dullards you both are." He goes, "Look at each other and tell me what you see." He goes, "Oh," and then they saw each other. They had grown in stature. Their clothes had gotten better. Their minds who had been purified by the suffering of where they had been at, they started actually appearing in a better light. She goes, "Oh, finally, you catch my meaning." So they're in outer garments, and as they walk out, outer garments even got cleaner, and their physical form appearance got to be more like they were, as their idealized self on earth. And they came into this wonderful place, and in the wonderful scene, they describe as, as a river. There was a band playing in like the middle of a small little city, nice houses. Whereas, of course, we've all read the lower zone. It's mostly, bare vegetation, decrepit houses, because those are, that's all they have. And he could smell for the first time flowers. He saw actual gardens. And then he said to himself, "Yes, God lives." And that was the first time he had really said that name. And he goes, "and loves." And that finally came into him, right? As the love of God is always there waiting for us. We just have to let it in, right? And as we've said from other spiritual, literature is goodness isn't all of us, and evil isn't evil per se. It's the lack of goodness. It's the lack of letting this in. So then she led them to a pavilion and asked them both to wait. And what she did is she brought the wives of Paul and Albert, who had been in a higher level, but they've been waiting for them in this lower level for them to appear. And so therefore, this shows, this shows the love of God. And I also wanted to bring this to you because I think that it's so interesting to see this other perspective. So if you get a chance to read Reverend Vale Owen, or I've categorized all of his stories, and it's 3 books, right? There's book 1, Heaven and Below. Book 2 is the Spirit Universe, right? So it's all about spirits and the Spirit Universe, and then book 3 is all about how we're guided by spirits, and all this has been revealed by the Reverend Vale Owen. And I think it just adds a lot more information than you would read. It's as I said at the beginning, it's complementary, right? It fills in what you read by Chico Xavier, and of course, it extends, of course, the book that everyone should read in the Spirits book by Allan Kardec. Now, to get the Spirits book by Allan Kardec, again, I would recommend on my blog site, I have a picture of Allan Kardec up in the upper right-hand corner. And if you go to that picture, it's in my blog, is nwspiritism.com. If you go to that picture, it will take you right to the EDI CEI bookstore, and you'll see all the books. They have a section of books in English, which, I found it was just a wonderful discovery. Of course, for those of you who Allan Kardec books, who don't want to buy books or can't spend the money, again, I'll tell you, look up Allan Kardec, and then in your search, put in PDF. You can find every book by Allan Kardec in PDF version, and actually some other books. I found some books by Leon Denis, again, a wonderful guy who came after Allan Kardec. Yeah, he was French also. These are translated. You can find them in PDF. And then also in the Facebook side, on my Facebook site, Spiritism, the Spirit World Around Us, I have my small little book, Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation. That's in PDF form too, so you can download. There's also other books there that people sent me who know my site. They're in English, so I'm hoping that, with my blog site and, of course, Kardec Radio now that we're doing, and my other Facebook site, Spiritism, Spirit World Around Us, we are engaging more and more people in the English speaking realm. Also, like to say is, hopefully someone's listening from England, because I had a message from someone saying, we're a group of Brazilians in England, and we're reading Jiva Owen. I said, look, this is like, I think 3 or 4 months ago. I said, look, I'm coming out with 3 books, and so I'm hoping they're listening to this. I said, because I'm so glad you are studying Beyond the Veil, because there's so much information in here, and it's new to you, right? It's all additive. So again, I want to bless everybody who's listening to the program. I just hope everyone is, has the best, and I will end this here, and God bless everybody. And so again, remember, next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, all the other time zones around the world, we will be on Kardec Radio, and we will be live streaming on the Kardec Radio Facebook page. I'll put our end clip on now. And I want to thank everybody just that we were able to come here tonight. And thanks for Vanessa and Saloni and everyone else to help create this Facebook site so we can. Thank you.